Good morning. Welcome to the Sentinel Newsroom. I'm Editor Bill Wilson. Our guest today is Rochester Mayor Mark Smiley. Mr. Smiley's been in office for a little over a year and a half now and was kind enough to share part of his morning today with Sentinel readers. Without further ado, does your administration have a mechanism in place to do that, to perform that function?
Well, we've kind of trying to bring in the retail merchants back, and that's kind of had a lack of interest lately. The chamber, Allison Heidi with the executive director of the chamber, she does a really nice job. There's a lot of variables in there. We've got the executive of Fedco, Shane Blair. You know, we're all working together, and one thing that we're trying to do now, not necessarily me, but everybody is doing the regional economic development now. It's not necessarily Rochester, Indiana anymore, it's a region. So we're really part of the region with Kokomo's, Fulton County Economic Development, and the region, because a lot of plants in Kokomo or north, we're kind of in a bedroom community anymore. A lot of people drive to work.
There's not a specific committee?
We do not have a specific committee right now working, other than like those two organizations that I did say.
When Herb Korn resigned as chief of the city sewer system, City Hall workers expressed the opinion that he had inappropriately hired his wife and son to work in the department. Is there a city policy on nepotism? Would you allow a city department head to hire his wife and son today? Are there any other cases of nepotism on the city people?
Okay, in my administration, I do not like family members working. We have a lot of, we have a few that have the same last name that have been there in my administration, but I don't feel it's my position to let someone go just because they have the same last name. We have several cousins working together, and we do have my street department and my water department, Terry and Jerry Wynn. They're twins. They've been with the city 39 years. They're getting ready to retire. I hate to see them retire. They have a lot of knowledge in their mind. They have a lot of knowledge, I'll say, is the infrastructure, the storm sewers, the water mains. That's the very valuable tool. But in the future, I do not like to see family members working in
Is there
the
a
city.
Written nepotism policy
We do
for
not have
new hires?
No, we do not have that. It's all depends on the mayor in charge, how he feels about it. My personal feelings about it, I don't like to see family members working for the city.
The state charges against Mr. Korn allege that there was some kind of bypass or extra piping that allowed effluent to flow into Mill Creek. One of the IDEM documents alleges that a January 2006 report does not acknowledge the raw sewage and secondary bypass points within the treatment process, nor does it identify the additional outfall in Mill Creek associated with the bypass. What exactly are they talking about there? Was there a runaround pipe?
Well, you know, that's, to answer your question, we have an every wastewater treatment facility has an overflow pipe. If we get too much wastewater coming in to our plant will handle pretty much 2 million gallon a day, you know. But the thing of it is that when it rains, we get a lot of infiltration. You get infiltration coming down from a lift station. A lot of your sewers have groundwater coming into them, so therefore you get an abundance of flow. Every wastewater treatment plant, if you get more coming in and it can go out and treat, has an overflow. The only thing that what happens there was Herb Korn was fraudulent of changing some of the figures. So when we were out of line, every wastewater treatment plant has specifications you have to meet from Indiana Department of Environmental Management with ammonia and E. coli and everything like that. So he had, for whatever reason, he changed some of the figures when it was slightly over the
But there wasn't
specs.
physical runaround that was out of bounds. That's not what we were talking about.
No, no. And we did have a place there that they've cemented and shut since then that was an overflow, that if it got too high in one area, but that had been there for, the plant had been there since 1955. I believe that's the year it was built. So the good thing for Rochester, we do not have combined sewers, CSOs. Our storm sewers and sanitaries are separated, so that's a plus for Rochester, Indiana. A lot of cities are having to change those now, and it's in the millions to do so.
While we're on wastewater, can you tell us about any upcoming plant modifications or expansion?
Right now, we're not planning on doing any expansions, but we are complying with Indiana Department of Environmental Management, which is IDM, because of some of the situations when it gets cold, we get a high freeze, and our biotower out there will freeze up, and the ammonia level will go a little bit higher than.
That's where the microbes
Yes.
live that consume a good amount of the effluent, or the bad stuff in the effluent.
Well, they take. That's the final stage. Okay, we have several stages that the wastewater goes through, but the final stage, it goes through your clarifiers, and it goes through a couple trickling filters, and then by the time it goes out to the final trickling filter, you got to get the, if it freezes, they call them the bugs. They're not really bugs, but it's the microorganisms in there that take care of the final process of it. So we're working on that right now with Bonar, and we have a couple options. We're going to try to probably bypass the 1,000,000-gallon mixing tank, which was put in for Deans years ago, and now Deans aren't sending over as much as they used to, as far as they've got their own processing towers and tanks there behind Deans before it comes into our facility. So we can bypass that 1,000,000-gallon mixing tank, and that'll give us 10 more degrees to go on through the system. So actually that'll be better when it gets into the tall trickling biotower, the filters, and we're going to take out a level of the screens, so there'll be about another 2 foot that the ice would have to build up before it stopped the arms that go around to get rid of the ammonia.
More in the nature of a tweaking than a major modification.
And if this all works, if IDM lets us, we have to have another compliance letter to the state, because we were going to build a building over a couple of those tanks, and then maybe have to put a cap on it. If we have to do that we could spend $400,000 and some. So before we did that, I wanted to get a professional engineer to give us his approval, because he's got the PE stamp, which is a professional engineer, rather than just going by what IDM said that maybe this is what you should do. I thought it was a good investment to spend $8,000 with the engineer just to back us up, and now they've come out and said they believe we could try this. And if it works, we won't have to do any more. But if IDM lets us go ahead with this, since we said we were going to build the buildings and put the caps on, we might still have to stick to that. But I would assume they would let us go ahead and try this.
Now, you purchased some land at the south end of town for a new water tower. Where exactly is that site? When might the tower go up, and what will it cost? And lastly, what will happen to the old tower here?
Okay, the site they purchased is on East 18th Street, by just west of Oakwood Apartments there, and there's the housing development, Oakwood Drive, I believe it is, right in that area. It was behind some of those houses. There was like 3 lots there. The water company bought those 3 lots off of an individual, and the water tower would go on the back lot, and it would probably cost at today about $1.3 million. I believe we would run a 12-inch main sewer, or not sewer, water main into it, and we'd tie it around by Stella Deeb's property there, and then Del Becker has some property on Old 31, which would be going out by Rosedale Hotel. We'd make that loop. That way you have to have a loop when you put a water main in that size, so that way the water doesn't deadhead and you wouldn't want it stagnant, so it would keep on moving. When it will be built, if everything goes to today's schedule, it would be about 2012. And what would happen to the old water tower, it would be taken off. Whether it would stay up is unknown, or tore down. I can't answer that at this time. It is in the historical part. It would be neat to paint a round barn on it, but I don't know if we do that just to maintain that or not. You
don't think that would look a little schmaltzy?
Well, it could be neat for the Round Barn Festival, but you know, the all practicality, I don't know what. It depends on what the water board decides and where we go from there. Just to have a monument like that would be expensive in the long run.
Did you or the city council give any thought to having dogs chase away the Mill Creek Golf Course geese?